to Books Are Good Medicine, a podcast sponsored by the Shakopee, Mdewakanton, and Sioux community, featuring books and other Native American-focused teaching resources. We're your hosts, Odia Wood-Krieger
and Allison Waka. Dream of Wild Health is a local nonprofit here in Minnesota working to restore health and well-being in the Native American community. They focus on sharing knowledge and access to healthy Indigenous foods, medicines, and lifeways.
For this episode, we visited with Jill Greendeer and her son Justice while they were at the Minnesota Indian Education Association conference. Jill, Dr. Greendeer, is the program manager for Dream of Wild Health. She is an enrolled member of Ho-Chunk Nation and a Potawatomi and Kaw descendant. Jill has experience working in academic, corporate, and clinical settings, both within and outside of Native American communities. She has served as an Indigenous research consultant on several projects, including a new report called Indigenous Voices Elevated.
Indigenous Voices Elevated evaluates the state of Indigenous education in Minnesota, exploring Native student academic progress, graduation, attendance rates, and mental health. Justice is following in his mother's path. He participated in youth programming at Dream of Wild Health and now works for the organization. In this episode, we discuss the goals of Dream of Wild Health, Jill's new research, how to ensure Native students feel better represented in schools, resources for educators, and much more. Enjoy.
So, welcome. We are on location today, which is really, really exciting at the Minnesota Indian Education Association here in Shakopee, Mdewakanton, and Sioux community. Really, really happy to have you all join us. If you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself.
Ho-Chunk Rajida Shishuchka Yingade, Naga Makde Rajida Justice. Hey, my name is Red Deer. My colonized name is Justice. I'm from St. Paul. And I'm with Dream of Wild Health. I'm a guy. So yeah.
Hanan chani kariwi mujahi winga hingaide nega chotoga hingaide nega chahihi kara chisha anje naga monicho hararu sergi hachieje naga Dream of Wild Health eja wadaje. So hi, welcome. Thank you for having us. And we are definitely honored. My name is Majahi Wing, or Swan that dances for takeoff. My colonized name is Jill Greendeer. I am Deer Clan. I live in Twin Cities. I work at Dream of Wild Health. I'm an enrolled citizen of Ho-Chunk Nation and a Potawatomi Kaw descendant. And a mother of 4.
So one of the things that you didn't say was Dr.
Yes.
Jill Greendeer. And I know that you were trying to be very humble, but I'm also very much about you earned that title. And I always like people to know that and respect that and use it. And maybe you don't want folks to, but it's an incredible honor and a lot of work to do that. And so, I know that you're a great role model for all your kids and all your sort of kids that you work with. And so there's a ton of them. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that, Dr. Jill. And this is the last time I will embarrass you by...
Am I blushing? Just kidding. No, pinagiwi. That's very meaningful. Yeah, and we don't have to get caught up in titles, but, and we can get into that too. And that's part of why sharing our story, our narrative is so important, because in those academic spaces, they're not made for people like us. And it is really like we're going to psychological warfare. I consider every scholar a warrior, in whatever state they're in. But yes, Pinagigi for saying that.
If we could start off, really, what was how did you get to where you are right now? What made you decide to go and get your doctorate? What was sort of the impetus for that? And, as it led into some really critical work that you've done.
Absolutely. Well, I think honestly, my ancestors planted those seeds before I even got here. I think it was part of the sacred contracts that were made prior to that. And, always giving me the strength to keep going because, like I said, it is definitely, you're constantly in survival mode. You're constantly in this battle mode because those academic structures are against you. and whether people consider themselves an ally or not, they might not even be aware of the injustices or their implicit, explicit bias that they elude when they're trying to quote unquote support you. So honestly, the reason that I did it is for my children. I had a child in every degree that I have. So I have 4 children. So I have 4 degrees. So my
I love that.
Yeah, they're my reasons and my seasons, and each one of them were born in a different season. So justice was in my bachelor's degree, and my oldest daughter was in my first master's program in behavioral aspects of physical activity and kinesiology, and then my Raven, she was in my second master's program, and then my shining star, my Zeta, she was my PhD program. So it was because of them, because I knew that I had to.
Incredible. It's beautiful. Can you tell us a little bit about how you landed at Dream of Wild Health?
It was because of my children. They were hurting. It was during a time when they had lost their grandfather.
No, take a second. I cry all the time. So believe me, our last podcast, there's always tears. I think these things, and I love the authenticity that this podcast brings, because our listeners need to hear this and learn this for our children and for the students that they're teaching and the parents that are listening. And so definitely take your moment. And so your grandfather then?
And he had passed away. And at the time, my little Nani, who was working at Dream Wild Health, Jessica Greendeer, and she was our seed keeper for a really long time. She still is for our Ho-Chunk relatives. And she has many gifts, and they continue to thrive and be in Dream Wild House space even today. But she was like, "Hey, what are you guys doing this summer?" And I was like,
"Good question."
I don't know. She's like, "You guys want to come out to the farm?" And she's like, "There's a program out here. The kids might really like it." I was like, "Yeah, I do." And right away, like, the first time we even got out there, Ernie Whiteman.
Tears start again, right?
I think every time someone says the name, it just brings up very revered and for a good reason.
Absolutely. And he's still here too. But he welcomed us, and he was like, "Hey, what are you guys doing over here? Come sit down with me." And I was like, and right away he just welcomed us in, and he took Justice under his wing, and started teaching him about the tobacco, and it was right on that first day, and it was something that it's like we were meant to be here. And so my older children did a couple seasons of Chorus Kids, and then they went right away into Garden Warriors. So that's kind of how we got connected to Dream of Wild House. So I have been a program parent for almost 9 years. I am still a rookie in this role as program manager, but everybody thought I worked at Dream Wild Health, but I really didn't. But because I would advocate for so much for the healing and the work that's being done, and like how I see like my kids needed that space to heal and to grow and to feel that sense of belonging that they didn't get anywhere else. And especially meeting our other young relatives at a sense of support, those were lifelines, because a lot of the times they are excluded from certain social aspects of, conventional education systems, because, they might not be seen or heard or valued. And in that space, it was like they were welcome, like they were a long lost relative coming home.
So I want to back up just a hot minute. We all know what Dream of Wild Health is. And we just assume everyone knows what Dream of Wild Health is.
Yeah.
Like they should, right? What would you say your 1 minute or 30-second elevator pitch for Dream of Wild Health is?
Absolutely. So Dream of Wild Health is one of the oldest Native-led, youth-driven Native nonprofits in the Twin Cities, greater Twin Cities area. And our mission at Dream of Wild Health is to restore the health and well-being in the Native community by recovering knowledge of and access to healthy Indigenous foods, medicines, and lifeways.
Well, there you go.
And, we say Native nonprofit, but Dream of Wild Health makes it accessible for all sorts of folks. There's the farmers market people can shop at.
Four Sisters Farmers Market, yep.
Yeah. And then they do garden cleanups. People are invited to that. There's, a cookbook people can buy. So there's ways allies can also be a part of it too. They do plant sales, things like that.
Yep, we do plant walks. And so I do oversee 3 big programs. So I oversee our youth programs, obviously. And those are, with Cora's Kids, Garden Warriors, our youth intern, and then our youth leaders. And then I also oversee our nutrition programs. And we're out in the community doing like multi-generational cooking classes, cooking demonstrations. We do them at farmers markets sometimes, and for a variety of different organizations and different events. We also have our Indigenous Food Network. And Indigenous Food Network is such a blessing because it's really leveraging all the amazing work that most of the Native led organizations or that are aligned with Dream of Wild Health, and leveraging our resources. Like, what can we do? How can we support each other, like in this network? And how can we uplift, Indigenous food sovereignty? How can we uplift Native communities? How can we uplift our youth? How can we uplift our elders? How can we lift multi-generational platforms? And so it's really about working smarter, not harder. And in doing what we always do, come together, showing up, being good relatives to each other, and just fulfilling our sacred contracts that we made with each other before we got here.
I actually, last fall, we got to meet at a canoeing event with IFN.
Absolutely.
On Lake Nokomis, which was, the weather was perfect. And Hope Flanagan was my stern, and we just meandered around. And it was delightful, right? Just gathering in community. There were snacks. Yeah. Of course, there were snacks.
Healthy Mission-aligned snacks.
Yes. Cedar tea. It was amazing. And the afternoon just zoomed right by. But Justice, I want to turn it over to you as someone who, you got to grow up a little bit in all of this and become who you are and have it, I don't know, maybe change you or influence you. I don't know. You seem pretty solid in who you are, but tell us a little bit about your experience at Dream Wild Health.
So my experience at Dream Wild Health began, I want to say it was summer of 2019. And that was my first season. I was a chorus kid. I had the blessing to, come to the farm and, while Ernie was still here, I got to, connect with him. And I think that's what really opened my path and way to what my soul wanted to do and wanted to be, where I did want to work with, our medicines, our plant relatives, and to not only nourish them and build them up, but then to help everything else around me just be more healthier and get rid of all of that trauma that was on our backs. And going into COVID, Dream Wild Health was a lifeline. I remember we used to have these video calls, and my best friend Astrid, that's how we started to connect way more, because it was a tough time, but Dream Wild Health was still there, and they allowed me to express myself in ways I had never done before. And because of that, I started to, because you gave that to me, I want to give that back to, youth coming in. So as I became a garden warrior, I built that connection with, all my peers, and then going into youth leaders, going outside in the community, doing that. And also having a little bit of fun, I wouldn't say that.
A little bit of fun.
I wouldn't say that I'm perfect, because no one's perfect. But as I became an intern, I really understood. I just began to understand, how much impact and how much growth I had from the farm and how far I've come as a person, because there is a time where, I didn't value my life, I'll say, but as, I connected to myself and connected to my roots, whether it was cultural or like within my plant relatives, I found that, light, and I was like, I'm going to shine it as bright as I can, because I know I'm not the only one that's going through this. And, really, like, all youth, we go through so much, like, just as Native people alone. And that's not including, if you're LGBTQ plus, you're mixed. Like, there's so many other factors that can come in because of that. And I just started to gain, an understanding of how perspectives work, and how I had the blessing to really just get all those perspectives and and I have the voice to tell that and the platform to do so. So as I'm becoming staff, I want to just show like, hey, you're going through a hard time. I know that, but there's so many things and so many people here for you, and you might just not have met them yet.
You are such a remarkable young person.
Yes.
And I can see your struggle that you've gone through, but your authenticity to share that with us and your vulnerability is just really, really beautiful. And I just wanted to call that out. Yeah. Sorry, Mom. Still trying to keep him humble, but just really, really beautiful.
I just speak from the soul. I mean, it's my story. No one's going to take that away from me. And no matter what words are said or harm that's done to me, I know nothing can taint that if I can just, love myself and hold myself in a happy, healing, positive way. And that's hard sometimes, but when those hard times do come, that it circles back to juvenile health. I got my friends. I mean, I got my friend Lucia back there. But just being around the people I've met, the plants and the culture, it's opened up so many more avenues for me in terms of like just healing and coping. I honestly don't know where I'd be without juvenile health. So shout out them.
Well, as I was listening to you, I was like thrown back into like the beginning of COVID. Remember like how crazy it was? And we're like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And suddenly everyone found Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass. Like suddenly everyone was like, oh my gosh, there's like a wild world and reciprocity and like all these things. And we're all like, cool, glad we're catching up. Right? So it's really funny to me that really in this time of like total chaos worldwide, you're suddenly like, cool, this is my opportunity to find myself and find my people. Yeah. And that was pretty amazing when you figure out all of the other crazy you were able to figure out.
I think it's a good lesson too, because I think it showed to me, and I'm sure it happened with other people. Like, if I can make it through this, who knows what I can do in terms of like positivity and just, living.
Keep doing it. You're awesome.
What is your dream? Like, what do you foresee in your future?
I mean, I have several goals. Yeah. I mean,
4 degrees.
I don't know about all that, but I'm a music guy. I love music. Okay. Hoping to make a big one. But if not, I'm still just trying to get my story out there no matter what. In terms of like what I actually want to do, besides, I want to have a family.
Yeah. But we're going to destroy your mother in this podcast. She's cried 3 times already. Just keep going. Let's go for 5. No, let's go for 10.
But
blessed. Hashtag blessed.
Goals wise, I want to be able to, give back to the community that was able to help me, like, just find myself. And I know that, I know a lot of people and a lot of friends and family that, struggle with not only identity, but all these other things like food, just having a safe place. And, as I get older and older, I want to be able to give back to that community, especially within the Twin Cities, where it's just like, I see all my Native relatives, or just relatives in general who, are struggling out on the streets because they didn't have that help. They weren't as blessed as, I am, because I know if I didn't have my mom, I could very well just be that exact same person. And it's a shame that, a lot of these people get looked down upon when it's just, they didn't get the help they need and deserve.
And it was intentional too, right?
It was. Yeah. It's institutional. In order to fight back, we need to go against that system, and we need to stop thinking like that. So I want to be able to just, in the future, not only do what like Juvenile Health is doing right now, but I want to do more. It starts with the youth and taking care of them so that they can foster the next generation of youth and keep on doing better and better, because I'm thinking 7 generations ahead, you know what I mean? I'm not going to be here forever. However, I do want to, I hope that there's a world where even when I'm not there, they're living a better life than I did. And I think everyone deserves a good life, and they just need the support that they need, because everyone's hurt in some way, shape, or form. And it's just finding ways to cope and finding ways to not be ignorant about these issues at hand. And like I said, perspective. It's all about perspective to me, where I can know everything, but nothing at the exact same time.
Right?
I feel that more than I know.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a book to me. Not that, not to push anything on you, but definitely it sounds like you're a writer and storyteller and
spoken word.
Yes. And somehow tying that into your music. And so this is our first mother-son duo, and it's just really cool to see the energy you all have. And so I really appreciate you both being here. And it just my son is the most special person in the whole world to me. And I hope my son someday talks about me the way you're talking about your mother. And so
we are going to destroy Jill. This is going to be great.
Okay, what is the number 5?
it just comes with time.
Yeah.
I'll say that I like to be more vulnerable than most people, but I feel like that's because my soul is just I want you to know who I am. Mm-hmm. My story to me is important in many ways, and even if you don't choose to listen, I'm sure at some point in someone's life they'll look back and be like, huh, I remember that random guy.
And it creates change.
With these great earrings and the man bun.
You're creating really vibration throughout, and so I think the ancestors are definitely hearing you, and our future kiddos are. I hope my son can finally be with Chorus Kids this I'm really excited. So fingers crossed that he'll be joining you all at the farm.
Yeah.
But what we can want to just touch on your research just really quickly. That kind of leads us into your topics here. What Justice is saying about his experience and the data that's in here. And it was really tough to read some of it, but I think it's important to know the numbers. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your research that's coming on?
Yeah. So honestly, this also came out of COVID. So because, and I was on a fellowship, I was on a parent fellowship from Voices for Racial Justice. I was a parent fellow there, and I got connected with Ed Allies. And they were like, hey, do you have any interest in being an Indigenous research consultant? We've never really had that. And I'm like, interesting. Well, yeah, I'm interested, but, I hope this isn't the last, So they're like, well, we have a opportunity to really dive into the barriers and challenges that Native students and families encounter in K-12 education in Minnesota. And I was like, I think I need more time than just what you're giving me, and more resources, because it's very complex. And so I got this opportunity to do a small exploratory research summary about the barriers and challenges that Native families and students encounter in K-12 education. And the aim was really to elevate Indigenous voices. So talking about the numbers, and the data is there.
Yeah.
You know, because they do keep track. And when this work, I would cry almost every single day. Because I'm like, how is there only 773 teachers in Minnesota that are identified as Native? How is that out of the 112,000 some Minnesota teachers? Like, if you have these numbers, how do you think that that's okay for representation? And number two, like, I know that our student, ideally, they want to meet student population to teacher representation, right? Which Minnesota report card on that, they're failing miserably. I mean, I'm just going to be completely 100 because they're less than 1%. And even as a smaller population of Native families and students, which I do also think that is skewed because of multiple ethnicities, multiple races that are on that demographic form. So, but with the data that's there, it's 3%. So there's so many profound, if you follow the numbers, there's so many profound findings in there in terms of with math, it's like 2 times less than, you know, Minnesota, all of Minnesota, 2.5 times less compared to white students as meeting Native students meeting the math requirements. Reading, same thing. I think that's actually just a little better. Like it's, you know, like 1.5 times for reading. But, and then like the thing that also is just alarming is the fact that Native students are 4 times likely to have attrition, to drop out. Talking about higher education, Native students attend higher education at 39%, whereas a white counterpart at 70%. And, you know, I don't find that surprising in terms of my experience when I went through my PhD program. And that's really the essence of this research is like, where is our story? Where is our data? Where is our support? Where is the Indigenous contributions that we have given to science, to math, to the infrastructure? Like it's never talked about. If it is, it's highly whitewashed. It's very brief. And, you know, Native students are often tokenized to like educate about that, educate educators. And then it's like, hey, you know, then I'm including you and I'm not being racist, but they don't recognize the harms that does too. So it's like these things have come up time and time again. And in these interviews, there were many healing tears that were cried, but it's also a deep call to action, you know, not just for Indigenous students and families and educators, but for all educators. Right. Like we can't do this alone. It's the system. And we need to elevate Indigenous voices. We need to be inclusive of Indigenous teachers and contributions, and not just in a historical context, in a contemporary context. You talked about Dream of Wild Health, like people should know about Dream of Wild Health, but a lot of people don't know. And the fact that they don't know is like where they're still looking at us in this historical context and not what we're adding and how we're healing and how we're thriving and how we're strengthening and how we're resilient and how we're connecting as a community. Right. And we're not just, you know, living in, you know, teepees and have feathers in our hairs and, you know, and if we do, there's protocols for that. You don't just do that, you know, because for the sake of, you know, trying to performative or, you know, go through the motions, because that's really what's happening in education systems. It's many of it is performative to check a mark.
So sadly, we're running out of time with you. I would love to keep you, but I do want, first off, is this available for people to find?
Yes, ma'am. So I did just get a link today, this morning.
As a parting question I have for both of you, what is the most important thing that educators can do to help support Native students? Not an easy question, but an important one.
I think educators, especially right now, need to educate themselves. I feel like as a teacher and as a learner too, you like just being constant with the knowledge you know is not going to get you anywhere. and you need to be open and willing to any and everything. And, until you know in your gut, like whether, this ain't for you or this is just wrong to me, you shouldn't make a bias or decision. And then, even then, I feel like you should still be open to a lot of things, especially if it's regarding a people. But like, you can't just like, I don't like being tokenized at all. That's why I'm doing, post-secondary education options with the University of Minnesota instead of going to my high school, because I was that token native at my school. And it's just like, especially as educators, you need to be willing to step up to the plate for your students. And if you're not doing that, you should not be a part of that space, because it's important that our schools are a safe place and that our children and our youth are protected in those spaces. So
say that louder given these times. So thank you for that. How about you, Jill?
I mean, everything that Chashuch said, and I also, there's so much, but what comes to my heart is being good relatives. I mean, that's really what this work is about. Like being good relatives to ourselves. Do your healing work so you don't burden others with your own trauma. I think that is really important. And also be aware of your implicit, explicit bias. I mean, the more that you are open about that and you're processing and you're learning, and listen and learn. And you can't always insert yourself into other people's narrative, because then you're not growing. So I think those are big things. If those were the just to keep it brief, because we could go on about this. I think this could be like a year podcast or two. Yeah.
Well, I think that's what we all have to understand, that we all grew up in the same system, but the thing was, it was made for them to thrive and us to be colonized. And so we really have to, non-native folks do have to realize, okay, and acknowledge I was a part of the system, but I don't have to be supporting it any longer. And I can,
exactly,
because if you're not, then you're at fault. Definitely.
Absolutely. And nobody benefits either.
Right.
Like it's not just, the native students. Nobody benefits. Like how traumatizing is that for, especially when white students, when they come to those truths, those are really hard to process. Right. Yes. And so like, if they have a healing space to be open and honest and heal with no judgment, we can all go forward and grow and thrive in love and healing together as
to dream,
dream and plant those seeds.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much.
Yes, this is beautiful. It just made my day. And
thank you for having us.
You guys are a lot of light here, and just kind of a rough week, and so thank you for bringing light into our day and our podcast, and really appreciate your time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Books Are Good Medicine. Subscribe to our channel on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can also visit our website, booksaregoodmedicine.com, to find episodes and resources, or to send us a comment. This podcast is sponsored by the Shakopee, Metawakan Sioux community and produced by Goff Public. Our theme music is Stomp Dance by Blue Dog. The opinions expressed on the Books Are Good Medicine podcast by its co-hosts and guests are their own in their personal capacities and do not necessarily reflect the views of any organization with whom they are affiliated or of the podcast sponsor.